First of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. Special thanks to the Drone Federation of India for offering this platform. Since yesterday, we've seen some rather incisive discussions and technical exchanges around the technology and its overall benefits. So, as mentioned today, we have a rather illustrious panel that's going to discuss drones as first responders in disaster management and also in case of managing the law and order situation here in India. So just a brief round of introductions once again to our panelists. On my right is Mr. Pankaj Kumar Singh, a highlight. He's the IPS officer from Rajasthan and the additional Director General of Police. He was instrumental in using drones in Chhattisgarh for anti-Naxal operations. Mr. Dilip from the Airport Authority of India is the Joint General Manager and instrumental in bringing India's civil aviation requirements on drones to life. And Dr. Ruchi Saxena is, of course, the Director of India Flying Labs and basically a chapter of V Robotics, which globally does drones and technology for social good. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'd like to begin this with a brief round of a few words from each of you on a very experiential level. I'll start with Mr. Pankaj Singh on how you generally see drones as a part of your repertoire in the police forces.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here and to be sharing my experiences regarding usage of drones. There are possibilities that they have been extending over a period of time. And the best part is to learn a whole lot of things from you all, because you are the ones who are, a number of startups are here, and you'll be giving us an idea of where all can these possibilities be used to advantage of the government machinery. Well, the first time I started using drones was 2010, when I was sent for anti-Naxal operations in Chhattisgarh. Now, Chhattisgarh, as you know, is an area where it's very hilly, and Naxal operations is an area where there was very little communication. To put it in a very bad light, we lost almost about 100 people in 3 months in anti-Naxal operations, and it was after that I was sent there. Now, losing 100 people is a very, very big loss, and the force was totally demoralized, not willing to move out at all. We did not have any idea where the Naxal operations were, the dangers that were there lurking ahead, and we just didn't know what to do. Well, we consulted a lot of people, and then we came up, we had a suggestion with the government of India to provide us with those big drones that the Air Force was using. We even got in touch with, at that time, Idea Forge had just launched Netra, and they had not used it anywhere. So we coupled the usage of these two drones with up there an eye in the sky up there, and we could plan our operations in a very safe manner, very predictable manner. From an eye up there in the sky, we knew where all the Naxals were there. We could plan our movements with more safety, and to tell you something, that within 1 year, from a loss of 100-odd people that we suffered in less than 3 months, we were able to bring down the casualties to just 11 in the next 1 full year. So that was the big advantage we saw of the drones. And in fact, when we were using drones, our force was also very apprehensive. You know, there are all kinds of apprehensions that come forth. So they said, no, sir, if we start resting in the jungles, if we start, relaxing in the jungle, you'll get to know. I said, that's fair enough. But, even if you're in danger, even if you're not able to tell me, I can at least provide in reinforcements. So that brought in a lot of confidence in the people. We used the smaller drones to, look over the hill, whether there was any danger there. So these two, the big and the small drones combined, I think provided us with a lot of safety, a lot of confidence in our operations. And that's how it started my, first interface with the drones. So then over a period of time, we have been using that in policing, in trafficking, and in border patrol and other organizations as well. So that's my interface, and one has found a number of uses of them in policing itself. And I think we'll come to that once we come on to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Dilip sir, you've been through through the motions in terms of policy and governance. And of course, the airport authority is the governor of India's skies. Most decisions that Mr. Pankaj Singh spoke of are very spot decisions when it comes to the law and order situation. So a few words from you on how, as someone who implements policy in India, how would you sort of govern such activity?
Morning, everybody. My role actually in AI is airspace management. So what airspace management is to design airspaces and give approvals for all sorts of operations, whether it is manned or unmanned. So we call the unmanned technology as disruptive, from the perspective of manned aircraft operations. But this disruptive technology has come here to stay, actually, for that matter. So these operations which happen, what we do is to give the operational approval once DGCA clears the drone operations from the regulator's perspective. So now with the CAR being published since last 1 year, effective from 1st December 2018, drones, we have an option of either, following or fulfilling the requirements of the car and then flying, which actually is a little difficult because of the NPNT compliance and then DGSky platform being not fully ready. So the other option is to get exemption from DGCA and fly. And all the government agencies like NTRO, who does these operations of surveillance, etc., are given exemptions by the DGCA. So once the exemption is given by the DGCA, they come to the AI for the operational approval, because the entire airspace management and air traffic management of the entire Indian airspace is with AI. We are actually known as the air navigation services provider. There is another part of military airspaces which are controlled by the Indian Air Force and Navy. So when the flight is happening in civil airspace, we need to give an operational approval. So what we do is to coordinate with the local ATC, which is affected by these movements. And since there is no provision as on date to separate, manned aircraft from unmanned aircraft, the reason being there is no separation standards published by international organizations like ICAO and even DGCA, we allow them to operate in segregated airspace. So what we do is to create a bubble of airspace for the drones to operate and make sure that the manned aircraft or the normal aircraft you fly in are kept away from this bubble. So that is our part. So what we do is to give the approval, taking into account the flight paths of manned aircraft, and then advise them to coordinate with the local ATC and possibly take a NOTAM. NOTAM is nothing but a notice to airmen, which is published that there is going to be, in the Western world, they call it as drone NOTAMs. So that actually gives a warning to the manned aircraft that drone operations are happening in this area. That's what we do to help them out in their operations.
Thank you. Dr. Ruchi, you have worked in some rather impoverished areas in India. You've done a lot of good work around drones for social good, especially in areas like Orissa. So maybe a few words from you on how you deployed these teams, the work that you've done, and most importantly, of course, why drones?
Sure. Thanks, Vignesh. Why drones would be the first question I would answer. I started off as a doctor. I mean, I've been a consultant for healthcare systems, disaster risk reduction, and building systems around emergency referrals in my past life, I would say. So the reason why I started working on drones was when I was living in Nepal and the earthquake happened, you realize that there is so much more which could be done using drones. And I was very happy that there were teams which were deployed in Nepal who were using drones, and they had done amazing work with it. When you see this happening around the world, and V Robotics was formed just after that, when you see all of this happening around the world, and when a similar calamity happens in India, for example, Kerala floods, you realize that, oh, is there something that we can do together? Are we a strong community? And I had this conversation with almost every drone manufacturer and service provider via LinkedIn that, you know what, this has happened in India. Can we come together and do something about it? And almost everybody said, yes, we are also trying to get through, but we have no idea how to do that. And we realized that here what we lack is probably being a community. If I go and talk like an individual, I'm just an individual. If I talk like a startup, I'm just another startup. But if we come together and talk as a community and build a respect and reputation, saying that, yes, you can trust us, you can take our help. We want to stand by the government and the forces and say that we are here to help you. We want to extend our help together. With this thought in mind, we started India Flying Labs. And India Flying Labs in the last 1 year has grown from just 4 organizations coming together to almost 30. And almost everybody I'm meeting these days is saying, oh, even we want to work in this. And what we are now trying to do is build local teams, local capacities, especially where the vulnerable areas are. So we are creating local chapters, which we call like task forces, UAV Rapid Response Task Force. Will be not just flying drones, it's about more discipline. It's getting in a system into place, SOPs, code of conduct, ethical guidelines, what to do, what not to do, how to communicate with AI, how to get the permissions, how to build trust in the community. This is what we are trying to focus on. And with this in mind, we were able to successfully do some operations in Kolhapur floods, in Punjab, Orissa. Now we trained even Nagaland State Disaster Management Authority officers. I mean, they would be going back to the districts and doing the same thing there. So we are trying to say that we want to empower local teams through a knowledge transfer and a technology transfer so that we are less helpless in the face of a disaster.
Great. Also following up on that, I think specifically with Orissa, you actually work very closely with the state, and you even reconstructed some of the damaged sites.
Exactly.
Would you, on an experiential level, want to share an example with our audience on what exactly you did there?
Sure. So even Orissa, when it happened, we had again put up a message that we want to work in Orissa. Who would want to be a part of this activity? So one of the first few people who came in touch with us were from Orissa, who had very good contacts with the government. They invited us that, why don't we do it together? I'm like, of course, we are all in for collaboration. So we directly worked with the principal secretary and the district magistrate of Puri district. And with them, we mapped about 2 villages. We created 2D maps, 3D models of the entire village. We were able to find every house which is damaged. We were able to classify it using artificial intelligence, mark it out. So we use a lot of those tools. And we realized that using these technologies is not that difficult. It's not a rocket science. Anybody can learn it. So we were using volunteers from Bhubaneswar to do this for us. One of them was a class 12 guy who could annotate and classify. So we could use his skills to do something more. And this is what we really believe, that let technology be simple, affordable, frugal, available. And then we can do a lot more with it.
Great. And before we move to Dilip sir, just to get a sense of the audience over here, I wanted to understand how many of the startups here work in the humanitarian sector when it comes to drones, or how many of you have been involved in humanitarian projects? Okay, I'm guessing there were more yesterday, but that's a fine number. So there's actually a line. There are 2. Of course, startups work on different fronts. There are many who, we had Zipline earlier today, who has been doing some excellent work in Rwanda. But there are many startups who come from both these angles, from the defense and from the humanitarian relief angle. So as a regulator, how do you of course, our laws have been very positive. We had some fine words from the minister also yesterday on how we're going to do this. But a few words from you on how can laws be more friendlier and more responsive to humanitarian projects such as this?
Absolutely. First, I'd like to clarify that I'm not the regulator. Regulators actually are the DGCA guys DGCA is the safety regulator of the country. They publish the regulations, the rules of the game. I'm from AI, which actually implement these regulations in the actual flying part. I know you all know that we have this platform called Digital Sky Platform, which is supposed to help in enforcing the provisions of the CAR, the Civil Aviation Requirements 1.0, and the future versions of it. Now, one particular point, or rather many, regarding the first responders have been, troubling us as well as the users, for that matter, that it requires a 24-hour notice for the flight plans to be filed through Digital Sky, which actually is not at all, conducive for any sort of first response. And then there were issues like, getting the approval through the Digital Sky from the ATC unit and et cetera, which actually eats away the valuable time for the first response. Actually, we have offered some solutions for that matter, in the sense like when we had these discussions on UTM, and we have many UTM experts like Amit here, who would vouch that there are ways to circumvent these problems through the platform itself. for that matter, if a particular organization, an operator is registered as a first responder, then actually there can be, the doors can open very fast, in the sense there is no need for a 24-hour notice period for the flight plans. It can be immediately waived off by the platform itself. That's one part. Number two, the operational approval. There is no need for anybody to wait in the queue. Actually, if you're going to fly in a yellow zone, the entire Indian airspace would be divided into three: a red zone where no flights are possible, a yellow zone where an approval is required from ATC or some other agency, and the green zone where the approval is going to be immediate. If this response area happens to be in a yellow zone, then you need to get an approval from at least the ATC. So you can actually configure the platform in such a way that, if this is going to be a first response drone, then it will actually bypass all the queue and then probably warn the ATC unit concerned that this is going to be a first response flight plan, please clear it immediately. So we have ways to, circumvent all these problems and then support them. And possibly, even go to the extent when the UTMs, when actually the environment is being controlled by UTM, unmanned aircraft system traffic management, then the first response drones would certainly be, indicated with a priority tag, and then even dynamic deconfliction and even rerouting of all the drones which are in the path of the response, or even creating a temporary flight restriction in an area where the response is happening. For example, there's an accident and the response is being focused in that area, then the UTM can actually direct or redirect all the drones which are intended to fly in that airspace to avoid that area because the response is happening. So we can have solutions through technology, and that's what we foresee. And the changes you require to have in the regulations would certainly be addressed by DGCA, because at the ministry level and the DGCA level, they've actually they've identified the issue that probably the set of regulations are not very friendly for the first response. But I'm sure that, through discussions, we can actually bring about changes in the next set of regulations, which is supposed to come later this year as CAR 2.0.
Great. And to you, sir, of course, maintaining India's law and order situation is one of the toughest jobs one can see. And you very nicely outlined that using drones has actually reduced the number of casualties in your earlier operations. So how do you see drones as a permanent part of the police apparatus? Do you see when it comes to the general control room, about drones being a key source of information? Maybe a views from you on the usage of drones.
Yeah, as far as the law and order is concerned, forget the law and order on the national level. You see, with the Drone Federation of India hosting this drone festival, even America went to the extent of killing General Soleimani to tell you how important the drones are. So not just that, even at the national level, whether it's just policing, law and order, whether it's traffic management or any kind of VIP security, drones are today a very important part of the police operations. And let me tell you, any kind of a law and order situation, whether you talk of what happened in JNU 2-3 days back, or what happened in the lawyer versus the police scuffle that took place, wherever the police or any other law and order machinery is not able to go, you can definitely have drones moving into that area and, mind you, pick up that incontrovertible evidence wherein person X cannot say that I was not doing this thing. So that, even from the legal point of view, to be able to collect evidence that will be placed before the court, that is a very, very useful thing and you can definitely maintain law and order and also bring that kind of deterrence with that eye in the sky that if that camera is going to catch your picture, there's no way that you can get off free from any kind of problem that you're creating. In any kind of traffic management, we are sending people in any kind of communal problem. Before the force reaches, you are dispatching drones so that it hovers over that area, at least tells the people that there's somebody watching. And mind you, there have been instances where people have, just moved out because there's a camera and there's a loudspeaker up there which is telling you your photograph is being captured. Stay away if you want to stay away from trouble. In any kind of VIP operations also, VIP security, it's a very, very big area. the kind of threat that does exist as on date, not all, but a number of VIPs, is very, very real. And the kind of way the people take law in their own hands, whether JNU or any other place, I think things are getting from bad to worse each day. So you need to have that kind of surveillance, that kind of mapping of that entire area. I mean, place like Kumbh Mela, 1 crore people gathered at one place. You can imagine the amount of chaos that can be spread by just one small person who may just be a prankster. So in a place like Kumbh Mela, in very big VIP congregations, very big cricket matches for that matter, you're just inside the stadium, there are very few getaways, so you need to get that entire area mapped, entire area even photographed, to pick out, if not then, maybe at a later stage, the people who created trouble. In kind of jungle operations, like I told you, I had a very successful stint with Naxal operations, and even in kind of very terrorist operations in Kashmir and all, they are using these very comfortably, very reliably, to their complete satisfaction. So what I'm trying to tell you here is, there's a phenomenal market. The police force in the country is 3 million strong. 3 million strong, indulging in all kinds of law and order, traffic management, VIP security, jungle operations, whether it's Naxal area of the Maoist hotbeds, or the northeast, where insurgencies are there, or the J&K, where the present things are. We are using UAVs in a very, very big way. We need all kinds of different UAVs. We've been trying to find out different vendors from the market. Yes, we don't know too much about UAVs as of now also. But yes, we are groping. We are trying to find out which are the best available, which are the best suited for our purposes today and maybe tomorrow also. In kinds of border patrol, now you know there's a huge border. Yeah, Rajasthan border is a dry border. There's a desert. So you don't need too much of surveillance on that kind of border. But Punjab border, you've heard. You've been having arms being dropped by drones, which are carrying 5 to 10 kgs of payload, dropping weapons, dropping maps, dropping different kinds of ammunitions also. Now, how much of a security can you have all along the border in Punjab, where you know the fields of the farmers are next to each other on the India and Pakistan border? How much of an anti-drone equipment can you install all along the border? Because these are small drones, low flying, cheap, do-it-yourself, kind of stuff, and you can just send the drone across with a pinpointed accuracy, and back to home it comes. So these are very tall orders, and we are facing even recently they also came up with the National Counter-Rogue Drone Guidelines by the Government of India. They've come out. So they have some areas called the full-scale security, where full scale would be the Parliament, the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and other such kind of places, where they just want to seal it off from any kind of drone attack. You have the mid-segment, you'll have the metro airports and other important refineries, power plants, nuclear plants, etc., where they would have kind of good enough security for these places. And then you would have some basic model for anti-drone equipment also. Now, any kind of mishap that's occurring in a place, it could be because of a person who's probably unaware of this policy. You have already, like the minister said yesterday, 5 to 6 lakh drones already there. Not everyone is compliant before the policy came up. It could be a prankster trying to test out the system. It could be a real malfunction of the machine also, venturing into an area where it is not supposed to be there. Or it could be a real enemy person doing this kind of stuff. With the kind of rogue drones that are coming in, all things possible, the smallest of those drones, and with the talk of swarms getting into, I think we are up against a very tall order. The demand is real. The threat is absolutely real. We in the police department all over the country would be needing drones of all kinds, different types, and also anti-drone equipment. We recently had a demonstration in the government also for anti-drone after this Punjab thing. So let's see. I think we'll also be learning in the process, and we'll have a lot to learn from you in the times to come, and maybe we'll be telling what our demands are so that maybe we can work together and make things, well, slightly safer, if not fully safe.
Great. I think we've also spoken very extensively on the immense benefits that this technology provides, and both of you all of you in fact have the best seat in the house when it comes to this technology. I'd like to raise the angle of public awareness. So given that you've worked in remote areas in India, tribal areas, even around the world. How do say tribal communities or the uninformed communities perceive technology, and how do you handle that?
That's a very right question, Vignesh, because this is what we call digital divide. We are here in Delhi, we are celebrating Drone Festival of India. There are still people in the world who still have to walk for 5 hours to reach the nearest medical facility. They have no idea what you're talking about. When you show them the drone, there is of course a curiosity which gets aroused. Some of them know about drones as something to be afraid about, that are used in attacks. That's what the whole news is all about. Awareness about drones for good is not much. And that's again the responsibility of our community to spread the word about how drones can be used for good. They're not always a threatful device that you should be thinking about. So when we go to different communities, the first thing that we do is we help them come and look at what we're doing. We engage them, we talk to them, we bring them in a village circle together, and we demonstrate that this is what we are doing. We take their consent. We are going to map their houses, we are going to map their farms, and we cannot do that without asking them. So consent, public consent, engagement, and making them a part of what we do is very important. Now, one picture that we show in most of our presentation is in Nepal. We printed the entire village map, and we use the community to annotate it, to stick stickers on it. Where are your clinics? Where are your open spaces? Which are the houses that you want us to go and rebuild first? So these were the questions where community was a part of our discussion. This is what we do to alleviate the anxiety as well as make them a part of our solution.
Right. In the interest of time, maybe 2 lines from you on where you see drones in the humanitarian sector 3 years from now.
Because Sir is here, I would like to really say this. We have 100, 102, and so 100 is the first number when anybody dials when we are in emergencies. If we can have an integrated system to even make our response, emergency response better, it would be that if I'm dialing for something, it could be road traffic accident, it could be a building fire, it could be a natural disaster. Strengthening the ecosystem would be that entire emergency response becomes better, and drones can be an integral part of it. Quickly go and have a look what's wrong, and then send the rest of the response after that.
Dilip sir, quick 2 lines from you. Of course, a backdrop around the discussions that we have around policy are largely around the ethics side of it. So given that a lot of data is consumed and there's a lot of data exchanging hands in efforts such as this, a few words of advice from you on how this can be managed better and the ethics of drone usage.
You know, actually, regarding the privacy and the concerns about misuse of data, the platform should work on trust network. So we have, the entire system of Digital Sky is being built on trust network. So when the first responders are registered, companies and their credentials are verified, and they use the data for good, and the data probably will rest with agencies such as police and hospitals, I think, and then the misuse of that would be to a large extent less, considering that large amount of personal data is not being collected. The objective being to save lives and property. I think that concern can be removed. But again, if you ask me or anybody, there could be some areas where misuse can happen, but we might postpone that particular thought for later. Now, our first objective should be to enable the system, like Ruchi said, to get certain focus areas, develop like, single point notification of the emergencies, and try to have a fleet of drones, like maybe the zipline has, and then to send them as the first observers before the actual responders come, or even we can fly in the emergency medicines, or even things like revival kits and things like that, and then possibly followed by the people to use them, or even have, I've seen a video which actually sends a drone and then with the kit, and then you ask them to just plug in their headphones, and it gives an instruction of how to use it. So anybody, any person who is actually on site can try to revive the person and probably make him or her alive, and till the real response and the ambulances come. So I think we should focus more on such things rather than issues which I'm not telling that they should not be addressed, but again, they can be addressed a little later.
Great. Final comments from you. We have a lot of startups in the room and also many on display who've been showing their products. How can they support you in beefing up India's security systems in 2 lines?
Yeah, as far as, like I told you, drones are concerned, we are finding very, very many uses of them, whether in the city or the rural or the jungle areas, many uses. What I would just like to tell you is, like any government system works, and this is an area where the technology is going to keep changing very fast, off and on, and regularly we are going to be up against the latest in the field. So one is a number of companies of yours are trying to sell drones to us. Yes, we may buy drones. We probably have the budget at times. Sometimes we have shorter budget also. I would like you also to look at, kind of model for trying to lease out drones. Because you have the expertise, you enter into a contract 1 or 2 years, because with the changing technology, you would be more adept at trying to get the best out of that drone, whether it's photography or mapping or trying to get into areas that are untreaded. So maybe you could look into that kind of model also. I mean, Zipline, they operate their own drones, and then they probably a different model. So rather than selling us drones, because in the government sector, once the drone goes bad, one malfunction, it will lie there for the next 2-3 months. Vendor is not coming, we don't have the budget. Things like this keep happening. So you could look into that kind, which probably suits the government much better. No one big outflow at one time, and maybe over a period. So that could suit you better also. We need for city operations, we would need those small drones with about maximum an hour's capability. And for the jungle operations, maybe 2 hours capability. And for the border surveillance, maybe slightly larger. As a policy part, I would also like to draw your attention. Maybe we could also look at tethered drones. Tethered drones is not part of our policy as of now, but tethered drones could, with the tether, it has a limited space, but it could be up there. Because it's tethered, it could be up there for a long, long time. It could serve the basic purpose, reduce manpower, save on manpower costs, and be that kind of foolproof security on the borders or other areas also. That's my take on that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for probably 2 questions, 2 to 3 questions, maybe a show of hands. Does anyone have any questions on the subject to our panelists? Yeah, please identify yourself.
Hello. My name is Sunil Agarwal.
Louder.
My name is Sunil Agarwal. I'm with Fleet RF Private Limited out of New Delhi.
Louder.
I'm with Fleet RF Private Limited out of New Delhi. And my question was, you mentioned about leasing drones and having drone manufacturers or operators work with the government more closely. How willing and how, just how willing is government to involve private companies in being part of the emergency system and modifying the existing emergency system so that we can integrate with that system? For example, if somebody calls the number 100 and we wanted to develop a system that will automatically deploy the drone to the incident site, how willing would the government be to make that kind of functionality happen?
To whom is your question?
From what I could get, you want that how, as leasing of drones, could you enter the government system and how the government could help? Is that the question?
Yeah, like essentially what we're saying is we are willing to provide...
Could you be slightly louder? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm pretty loud, I guess.
Sorry, yeah, we're willing to provide really good drones that meet the intent of first response. But at the same time, we have to integrate our drones with the emergency response system that India already has. For example, it could be legacy systems that are currently being used when you call the number 100. And we would want to work with that system somehow. So we will have to either use APIs or somehow integrate with the existing system. So it kind of requires the drone manufacturers and the government to work together to create a very well integrated solution. So we want to know more about how we can approach the government and how we could create a solution that will actually be not just an independent company flying a drone, but rather something that actually works quickly and helps the public in a much faster way.
I got your question. So what you want is please sit down, how you could work with the law enforcement agencies so that your drone operations can be tied up with their functioning so that they could be the responders, and how you could kind of facilitate getting into their system. Is that the question?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay, so there's no problem. I mean, we, as it is, as on date also, please, whether it's UP or Rajasthan, we are using drones as first responders to be sent to sites in big cities where the problem is already there and our force will take some time to reach. They're already there, we are operating. Maybe you could start a pilot project, you could offer your services. We could find out a model wherein you could offer your services in a particular city or any other area. And then we could fix up. We have beautifully made absolutely modern control rooms in the cities where all the CCTV networks of the city are tied to it. A whole lot of outstation places are also tied to it. We can get feed from any part of the state also on these control rooms. So that we have very good modern control rooms, and your operations of drone should be a very small part of it that could be tied to that. So you could approach us, our government, any other state also, central government, and maybe you could find a model, whether it's paramilitary forces in Delhi or in any of the states. There's no problem as such. The only thing is approach the right person.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I'd request you to keep it as short as possible.
Government of USA, they thrown away around 1,000 drones of Chinese companies because of security reasons. Do you foresee such kind of problem or thing in India?
I'm not sure. As of now, we will take whatever drones are compliant with the current policy that is in place. However, if any such thing comes to our notice and we are able to get at it, well, we'll go by whatever the government policy says. But without knowing anything, I would not like to, say that drones of a particular company, a particular country are bad and write them off. I would not do that. We'll go as per the government policy, and until we are able to detect on our own something that's wrong, invasive, or a security hazard.
Okay, thank you.
Final question?
Hello, I am Swaminathan. I am from IIBA. IIBA is International Institute of Business Analysis. My question is that, is there any capacity building framework, any draft version is in place, or anything is happening as a first responder? Is there any framework in place or any discussion in place?
Dilip sir, would you want to take that? So, for first responders, is there any policy or any framework in place for first response in case of disaster?
Is the question particular to the drones?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is there any policy if,
As a first responder.
For drones? Not now. Whatever
Exact,
policy you see.
For example, EMRI, 108 and all, there is a framework.
Okay.
How to get in that the call comes, how they, get attended and reach the place. Like that, there is a clear framework and process in place. Is there
So that
anything?
probably what you're, trying to get from me is there any policy for the first response, whether it is through drones or otherwise?
Yeah.
Actually, as far as civil aviation is concerned, use of drones, we don't have any particular policy only for first response of drones. We have a general policy for flying of drones. But Dr. Ruchi, would you like to add?
We are really open for working together with the government. There is something called Humanitarian UAV Code of Conduct, which is signed by about 62 international humanitarian organizations, which is practiced wherever humanitarian drones are used. We in India Flying Labs and rest of the flying labs in 26 countries, we take it as our Bible. Maybe the national guidelines or national framework for first responders or humanitarian activities using drones can be built upon it. We can start it as a base, and then we can build something which is particularly individual to our country.
Thank you.
As a policy from the DGCA, there may not be any policy for the first responder, but there's no bar to the drones being used by first responders, whether it's police or disaster management force.
It's a great answer.
NDA, and NDMA into consideration. They already have the systems in place. So though we may not have a separate code of conduct in civil, but the agencies responsible for providing such relief do have the means to use drones for such purposes.
Already using it.
Yeah.
One final question.
Very good morning, sir. I'm Pankaj Jaiswal. I am actually not into any business. I am a hobbyist. I fly aircraft, aero models, but also helicopters, models. Unfortunately, the laws or policies regarding drones are also applied for these things. So, what is your
question
take?
is? Sorry.
Sir, I am a hobbyist.
Yeah.
Okay, I fly aircraft and I fly helicopters as a hobby for recreational purposes. But my question is, see, all the policies that you implement for a drone are also implemented for hobbyists also, for a plane or for a helicopter. But the flying characteristics of these things are quite different from a drone. So my question is, how do you, what do you think about this?
I am Jagirdar from Jagirdar Aero Products. I am in the business for drone business for 25 years. I am a hobbyist for 30 years. So I will address this thing. DGCA in a letter very clearly has said that drone car does not cover aero models. Aero models and aero modeling is totally different. So as long as you are doing it as a hobbyist in a designated place, in a designated manner, they are in no way covered by this car. So fly in your area, fly according to aero modeling norms, and don't bother about the rules and regulations apart from that.
Thank you,
I would like to add to that. We have actually gone through this because, we found a little problem in, with the nano drones. There are two schools of thought. One set of people thinking that even nano drones should be very firmly, regulated, because that is from the safety perspective. Where it is a nano drone, just 250 grams or less than that, can, create real harm to manned aircraft. If it goes into the engine of a manned aircraft, it's worse than a bird going into the engine. So there is a set of people, which includes me for that matter, who thinks that even nano drones should be firmly regulated. But on the other side, the toy drone industry or the model drone industry or the recreational flyers think that, and a set of people in the government itself thinks that, there's no, we should not really regulate it to that extent that even a kid can't fly a drone. So then there are two different schools of thought. So what we are trying to do now, we are trying to make a different set of rules for the unmanned aircraft systems, UAS. And as per the International Civil Aviation's definition, UAS is actually the superset. And there are three subsets, one of them being the remotely piloted aircraft system, which requires a pilot to control the drone. Number two is the model drones, which requires a pilot, but which is actually flown for non-commercial purposes and for recreational activities, which can include a payload as well, which can have a camera or even carry small things. And the third set being autonomous drones. So in this new set of rules, it's just, just the thoughts are being, gathered. We would probably have a set of rules, or at least some mentioning about these three different, types of unmanned aircraft systems. So maybe you can expect a rule which says that under the nano drones, we might even categorize it further to identify the toy drones performance-wise as well as the objective-wise, and then maybe exempt them from having, the UIN number and the remote identification and things like that. So I think we're working on it, and then you can expect more from us.
Great. Thank you very much to our panelists for their insights. Thank you.